Time for a tune. Hello, you can hear me now. Welcome to Health Freedom again. And let me introduce to you Matt Roeske. Say hi, Matt. Oh, I've muted you, Matt. I do apologize.
That's okay.
Okay. You're muted now.
Nice to see you. Hello, hello.
Hi, Matt. And Matt is a guy he's got well, tell us about yourself, Matt. So just do a brief background on your website, etc., and where you live and stuff like that.
So our website is cultivateelevate.com, and we started our company to help bring ancient knowledge forward of different types of way to heal, and then also ways to elevate our terrain and bring forth just knowledge to get rid of fear, right? Because we're constantly bombarded with this fear frequency all the time, and just to get rid of that and to have solutions and resolve all of the fear in which we face. And also, I wanted to say the piano sounded beautiful as well too. It was great.
Thanks, Matt. Yes. Yeah, I can't read a stitch of music. I just to make it up in my head.
It sounds very good. It sounds nice. Nice to hear a real instrument again.
Well, isn't it? It's about energy, isn't it?
Yes.
It's about vibration, like the notes harmonize, and I'm sure you know all about the 440, 443, and stuff like that. I'm sure you know all about that as well. So you live in Arizona, Matt. I'm just going to do some warm up questions, and just also I'll just tell people a bit about myself. I'm a former diabetic retinal screener, and for legal reasons, just as we start here, I am not a doctor. The reason I'm called Dr. Robert is there was a Beatles tune called Dr. Robert back in the 60s. And when I first did my first interview, someone interviewed me about health, a guy called Jimmy O. He nicknamed me Dr. Robert, and it's sort of stuck really. But I like to say that I am definitely not a doctor. But I like to dabble with music and making my own medicine as well. I make some salve, I make some magnesium oil, I make my own vitamins, Matt. I do my own vitamin C. I make my own capsules and stuff like that because then I know what's going in them. But you're going to tell me a little about your website, hopefully, in a minute, and what you sell on it and what you promote. So yeah, and I was a former diabetic retinal screener. So that's somebody that you would, people who have diabetes, they would come along once a year and have their eyes photographed, the back of the retina photographed. And then from that, we would be able to detect whether or not people have got diabetes and whether it's affecting their vision, because diabetes is a microvascular and a macrovascular disease, and it starves the blood vessels of oxygen. And so therefore it can create, it basically makes the blood vessels swell and bruise, and eventually they can leak blood through lack of nutrition and oxygen. And then this then can lead to what we call diabetic retinopathy. And that's what I used to do, basically work in that industry. So Matt, first of all, I just want to say to you, what did you have for your lunch?
So for today, I didn't have anything yet. I fasted for the day, and then I will be having some chestnuts. It's chestnut season, and it's one of the best times to be eating them because they're high in a lot of different vitamins and nutrients that we no longer get, and they also are sitting in their shell, which is important. You know, when we go to the store nowadays, a lot of things are already peeled for you. A lot of things are already cut. A lot of things are already cured or whatever they are. You know, they've put them in something, and it's not the natural form. So you're not getting the most nutrients that you're trying to get. So that's why it's important to get things directly from nature and in their original form, because it rips all the nutrients out and changes the frequency. Because if we're going to talk about frequency today, that alters the food as well too. So we're going to be having some chestnuts after this, which I'm excited for.
Do you roast your chestnuts over an open fire, Matt?
So we don't have an open fire, but if I did have an open fire, I would, just like the song. But we do it in the oven at, I believe it's about 500 degrees, and I think it's like 20 minutes or so, and then you cut them so that they start to peel open, and then we put you can put a little honey on them. But
don't you have to put a cross on them, don't you?
Yes, you put a cross on them, which makes the shell just start to open up just like that.
That's right, yeah.
And it's funny because when you look at the chestnut as well, it looks just like the Russian buildings with the little onions on top, which are basically the little vortex that's on top of those. And they look exactly identical. So it's interesting that we mimic a lot of things with nature or with our building, but a lot of things when they used to build in the old world time, they did a lot of stuff mimicking nature, versus now we build a lot of things in straight lines and boxes and things that don't mimic nature and don't stand up in the same sense. Like they don't have the same stability or frequency because they're using fake materials instead of natural materials.
Well, a lot of foods, aren't they? Like brain foods look like some nuts and stuff like that look like brain foods, don't they? It looks like the brain, isn't it? And you can get all sorts of different things that look like, that will help that particular part of your body.
And that's pretty much what we started our company for, was to release different types of superfoods that help heal different parts of the body. Right? Yeah. Like, for example, like we have pearl powder, which actually, going back to the diabetes, works really well for eyes because the eyes are depleted of nutrients, and pearls give the same nutrients that are in the eyes. They also help with the teeth. They help with the bones. They help with the brain. They help with digestion. But each of our superfoods basically is trying to feed each different part of the body. So like lion's mane is great for the brain. Cordyceps is great for the adrenals. You have dragon's blood, which cleans out the blood. You have shilajit, which is a great chelator and great detoxer for pulling out heavy metals from the body. But basically, as I come up with new supplements and different superfoods, I try to understand, okay, what is lacking, right? What part of the body is most likely missing nutrients that we are needing? Because a lot of our foods, unfortunately, have been sprayed with so many pesticides and chemicals that they've stripped away all the nutrients down to 3. And then on top of that, they travel over 2,000 miles, and like you said in the beginning, if you are consuming a supplement or vitamin, it's important to be aware where it's coming from, the source it's coming from, and what's in it, right? Because like you said, if you're making it, you at least know what goes in it. But unfortunately, sometimes you might be going to the market and you might buy, for example, like a vitamin D supplement, and it's got all these inactive fillers, which are actually blocking the ability for you to absorb these things. So that's why I've always talked about getting everything from a food source as much as you can, because the fact of at least you will know it will absorb its best way into the body, because nature creates everything perfect for us to eat or consume or absorb, versus when we get things in a synthetic fashion, it's very hard for the body to absorb. And then you got to end up taking like 10,000 different things because you're trying to mix this with this and this and this, rather than just going the food source as a whole.
I used to take a superfood. That was one of the first things that I started taking, and that was spirulina.
Oh, nice. Yes, great one for you.
I
Yes.
used to take Hawaiian spirulina because I heard that it was one of the best ones.
Yep.
You know,
And
I avoided the Chinese and stuff like that. And
yeah, and with the spirulina situation, it's the reason being is because the Hawaiians, the way they farm their spirulina, that's basically why the nutrients, and also there's not a lot of pollution as well too in the Hawaiian Islands, so they can produce some of the best stuff. There's also stuff up in Washington and Oregon as well too. But that's why also the source is important. Like, we talk to our farmers, I know where things are coming from. I've seen everything. I'm very big on, like, it takes a long time to roll something out because I need to make sure that it goes X, Y, and Z and that it's the best quality. Because that's another thing that is hidden in the supplement fitness world, is that there's a lot of products out there, but the companies in which are producing these products usually have somebody who just writes a product for them and then creates it. And they don't know anything about what they're even putting into their body or even why it's supposed to go into the body, right? Like, they might mix ingredients or nutrients that don't go together, and then it kind of defeats the whole purpose. So I'm very adamant. I've been in the health and fitness world for a long time, and I used to be heavily seeing all the supplements and vitamins and whey proteins and all of these things. And a lot of the stuff, when I look at it now, today in 2022, a lot of it doesn't even make any sense. A lot of these things don't even go together, and it's very illogical, but it gets put out there because of a lot of money is usually backed behind it, and then a lot of marketing that goes with it. So I always say, just like I said, know where you're buying stuff from, know the source, and then also know the practices in which the company is doing and who owns it, right? If you start to look at, if you buy from somebody and you don't know who you're buying from, that can be a big red flag. Because if you're buying things such as supplements, even food, if you don't know where it's coming from, or you don't know the farm, or you haven't looked it up, that's very important information, because you don't know the source and what's going on. And you might be spending a premium, because I've seen this happen. People spend thousands and thousands of dollars, and then they go to see that it has citric acid in the product, which is a black GMO mold. So they're taking a detox product that has citric acid, which is a black GMO mold. And
it's
so
from lemons, isn't it, Matt?
that's what it used to be. So back in the
All right. So now very few are from lemons.
Yeah. So back in the 1910s and 1920s, citric acid used to be from lemons and limes, but that's changed to a black GMO corn mold. So they grow it off of corn, and they do their gene altering and everything else. So a lot of people develop allergies to that, such as, sinuses, runny nose, they start coughing, they start whatever. But a lot of citric acid is also put into detox products. So when a person is attempting to detox and get all this stuff out, they're actually consuming the thing that's causing the problem that they're trying to get rid of. So citric acid is one definitely to look for. But that's why I said, when you know who also owns the company, you can kind of see their vision and what they're entailing. And if you don't know anything, then that's also a flag too. Because I always see it as, if I don't know who owns anything, I don't know who I'm really purchasing from. And there might be somebody behind the scenes with a lot of money up here that also controls all these maybe smaller companies down here.
So really, yeah, I mean, again, it's like locally sourced stuff as much as you can, but again, that depends where you live and stuff like that, doesn't it, really? But you want to get as much locally sourced and know the people that's why, I mean, okay, I don't really sell my salve that much, but when people buy it off me, it's normally people that watch me or, within my country and stuff like that. And they know it's come from me. They know that I've made it. And again, this comes back to energy. When we were talking about like, your energy goes into sourcing those products and making those products. And I just wanted to ask you, right, where did you get your like skills of learning all of this from? Have you just learned it through reading? Have you done any courses, or anything like that?
So back when I was in the fitness world and I used to own a big gym that was all about powerlifting, bodybuilding, and being the real fitness way, the old school way, the way of lifting heavy weights and watching energy, watching people squat 1,000 pounds, watching people deadlift, 500 kilos, watching people do all kinds of different things. I've seen it all. That was the energy that was contagious in that time. But during that time, I started studying into holistic healing and different types of superfoods like cordyceps mushroom, lion's mane mushroom, chaga mushroom, all these different things. And I started putting them, into my regime basically, and started taking them, and then having other people try them a little bit too as well. And it was interesting because I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. And then I started getting into all this learning about how things were inverted, and I would do a lot of reading, tons and tons of reading, and I would understand, look at something and then analyze it this way and then analyze it this way and kind of go back and forth. And then progressively over time, it was just the accumulation of information and then putting them together. Like I would find something over here and put it together over here, or I would see something, maybe with this with flavoring, and then I would put it over here with, oh, this is with flavoring. That makes sense. That this shouldn't be in our food supply and things like that. And so then just over time of just reading and just being like a beeline to learn about it. Because whenever I would read a book, I would always look at like the references or the, in the back of the book where they show like, oh, this is where it came from. So then I would go, well, then those books must have some great information too, because this book is already great. And then I would start to put these things together. But I've always been very big into my health, into taking care of my health, being very grounded, being, into the gym world. But
Where do you get that from, Matt? Is it from your parents or?
Oh, just one day. I mean, I kind of just one day got into fitness. My mom took me to the gym one time. This was a long time ago, and it kind of just stuck to me. And then I had a CD player. This is back when I was like 18 years old. I had a CD player, and I would just go for a run, and it felt great. And ever since then, that was when I changed my whole world. I was big into video games at that time. I was very sediment, not moving around much. And then I got into fitness, and I just thought I should take, this is very important. Your health is the only thing you own. And I watched, family members pass, unfortunately, because of, and we can go into frequencies and everything else, but also health conditions related to diabetes, also health conditions related to dementia, also health conditions related to memory loss, strokes, all these things. And I thought, there's got to be solutions to all of these things. And there are, but it's just not told to us. And so I started really getting into my health and probably I would say in my 20s. And then getting into it more as I, got into my 30s, and then just keep like understanding and learning more. And then now what I never realized out of all of that I wasn't understanding of that whole spectrum was frequency, right? The frequency of everything, the vibration, resonance, energy that all comes from
everything has energy.
Yes. And when you're consuming high superfoods that have lots of nutrients, you're consuming foods that are loaded with high vibration and high frequency that are very healing. And if you surround yourself around other people who are also doing the same, they will uplift you and bring you up. And I saw that in the gym. I saw people do crazy things that it's just unfathomable, but it was the energy that was there. And that energy was just what powered people to do things that were just crazy. And then when I started understanding energy, I started getting into like plant energy and different types of superfoods, and how these things have different frequencies that are all vibrating all the time. And I started getting into how we can use these beautiful frequencies that are all around us to heal our body and our temple, but then also the plants that are around us and everything else. Because that's what's happened is we have this food that has lost its life force. It's diminished all of it. If you look into like Kirlian photography, they show the life force of food and all these different things. What's happening is as people are going through this whole experience of life, as they're being depleted on nutrients, their life force or magnetism is starting to basically dwindle. And that's what leads to aging, right? So if we up our frequencies and we bring in these nutrients and we start grounding and we start really connecting to nature, we can start to heal our body. We can also work on healing our water and our food and our gardens and all of the stuff around us, because even what you did in the beginning of this, just a 2-minute intro of a 432 hertz, puts our mind into basically a theta state so that you have focus. That's the magic of frequency of music. And music has been changed. It's been evolved to 440 hertz, so it causes irritation. And you see people driving down the street and they're driving frantic and like crazy because they're listening to music that's making them angry. And they're also getting pinged with frequencies at the same time. So when you start to understand these things in your terrain and all the things that relate to your terrain, you can basically take back your health. And as I started putting things together, I started understanding, if I basically switch out my polyester sheets for maybe linen sheets, or if I switch out the tap water that I'm drinking for distilled water or structured water, because we can go into that too. But if I start doing these things, my body will just heal faster and faster. And I don't need the system in which is trying to make a lot of money off of me and just continuously keeping me in this system, because I had so many health problems. I had, skin issues. I had tonsillitis.
You had some memory issues, didn't you?
I had memory issues. I had weight issues where I never could understand why my weight was always fluctuating. I had skin issues. I mean, I had all these things, and I literally fixed them all naturally. I didn't need anybody. And the biggest one was just learning about fragrance, right? The fragrance in a perfume, cologne, these cleaners and all of that, those lead to allergic reactions because they're loaded with petroleum, arsenic, lead, cadmium, and all these heavy metals. And when you spritz that into the air, you now inhale it through your one of your senses, your sense. And then those chemicals go right up into the brain, and you start sneezing and having all these issues. And it was funny because the professional that I was seeing at that time, I was about 21 or 20, they were telling me I was allergic to dust and mold and, the whole shabeel, and, oh, we'll poke you and that's what you got. And I thought, interesting. Well, let me see what happens when I get rid of this spray, this body spray I was using at the time. And I got rid of it, and all of a sudden my allergies were gone. And I remember I went back and I said, I think it was the spray the entire time. They're like, no, it's dust and mold, and it's just the season. It must have changed or whatever. And I was like, I don't think so. I go, it's really what I'm doing to myself. And I realized that's the whole thing. It's we have the choice for our power to take back our power and to not consent to these things, because we are consciously allowing them to come into our world, into our home, into our terrain. And we have to take back our power and change that. And that's where I started putting out as many solutions as I could on every different spectrum and every different thing, because I thought, I hope that it can help somebody. I hope that it can heal them. And then also because watching people, go through horrible things, and watching people in the system, and they're literally being tortured, in my opinion, and just forgotten, that shouldn't happen to anybody. And especially people who are older, because, watching people being thrown away in a nursing home and everything else, it's sick and twisted, just because their health has debilitated because they've been poisoned for the last 60 to 70 years. And it's not their fault, because also they didn't know, but they've inverted so many things. And now we have to revert those things back so that we can take back our health.
One of the first books, I mean, I'm sure you've been inspired by books as well. And I bet you're going to also probably talk about Victor Schellberger as well. But one of my heroes was Dr. Russell Blaylock. Have you heard of him?
It sounds familiar.
Okay, he did a book called Excitotoxins.
Okay.
And it's all to do with the brain as well. And like he was going on about how statins, give people dementia, and it starves the brain, the oxygen in the cells in the brain. And that was for me, that was one of the most important books that I ever read, and then understanding a bit more about why people are getting dementia and that sort of thing. And I just wanted to ask you, who is one of your health mentors from your past, that apart from maybe Victor Schellberger? Have you got anyone?
Dr. Tom Cowan and Dr. Andrew Kaufman. I would say those.
Okay, Andrew Kaufman I've heard of, yeah.
The two of them, and then we can also go obviously with David Icke as well too. He puts out a lot of information, but the two main people who I would say who changed my world would be Kaufman and Cowan. When I watched all of their work and then read the book The Contagion Myth, it changed my life forever. I mean, I've never seen anything the same ever again. And it all made perfect sense. And it all related to 2020 and the nonsense we all faced. And then I would say the other book that also definitely changed my world would be The Invisible Rainbow. And I think it's Arthur Fistenberg. And that one goes into frequencies. And that connected my whole dots with everything with diabetes and frequencies, wireless, cell phones, all of this. It all connected all the dots with that as well, too.
What's it called, that book?
It's called The Invisible Rainbow, and it's Arthur Fistenberg.
The Invisible Rainbow. Arthur Fistenberg.
Fistenberg. Don't quote me, but Furstenberg. It could be one of the two.
Okay, I've got it. Okay.
Last names and whatever.
And I was going to say to you, I remember learning about the whole rice experiment. Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so it's a bit like, when they discovered that water has memory. There was that Japanese guy, I forget his name.
Emoto. I can't remember. Yep. The Emoto, Dr. Emoto.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah, and the whole rice experiment for me was a real wake up call. And I've said this to so many people that why can't they teach this in school? Because then it would make kids understand energy. And so you've got like you cook some rice and you put it in sealed containers, glass containers,
Okay.
and then like mason jars, okay, and then you put 3 equal amounts in each, right? And then on one you write love, on the other one you write hate, and then on the other one you write ignore, okay? And then every day for 30 days, you go up to the one that you love and you go, you're the most beautiful rice in the whole world. You're going to live forever, and you love that rice. And then, you go up to the one that you hate and you say, you're the nastiest rice. And then the other one, you just go, huh, and you just ignore it. And apparently the one that obviously that you love looks like you can still eat it after 30 days. The one you hate has gone really black and moldy and horrible. But the most surprising one is the ignore one. It looks like it's got tumors on it.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that I can see. Yeah.
And again, it's about, to me, right, if we was to get kids to do that experiment in school, right, when they were horrible to someone or they spoke to someone and they understood energy, that's what you're putting into people, and even adults, Matt, maybe adults need to have that lesson taught to them. That's what we're giving out. That's the energy that we're giving out. We're not giving out anything like this positivity. You're giving out negativity.
It's true. And that's the same thing. It goes with plants too. And there was a guy, I believe his name is Baxter or Baxter. He had an experiment where he could basically understand that plants could read their mind, and that plants are so connected to us. So if we give our plants lots of attention and lots of love, then they will grow really well. And that goes exactly what you just said with the rice. And a lot of people have been asking me, oh, my plants aren't doing too well. And I thought, well, have you been giving them attention and love? Right. And if you think about these trees, there's a lot of trees dying, right? There's a lot of trees dying all over the place. And this can be multiple factors. This can be frequencies. This can be the stuff in the air. This can be a lot. But the number one thing I think also too, those trees are missing is people touching them. Back in the day, kids used to jump all over the trees. They'd be hugging them. They'd be playing in them. The parent would come out. Oh, you've been doing it for too long. Come on in. Maybe they would go out there and go up in the tree and have to get their kid, and the cats would go up in the tree. Everything's in the tree basically. So that tree received a lot of attention, and that tree would prosper and last probably a lot longer than, like you just said, if we are creating things with negativity and ignoring and just really disconnected, which that's the whole thing we've been taught, right? Our whole system, our whole school system, our whole everything is disconnecting you from nature. I mean, even just prime example, or from cooking, like just what you said, but prime example is you have like one field trip a year. You literally leave this box that you're in like once a year to maybe go somewhere. And then it's usually another box. It's not even like nature. It's somewhere else. That's another thing where they're also trying to tell you, like a museum, so they can reinforce those histories and those things they want to tell you. But they're never bringing forth love or positivity to uplift you and bring you to your best. And even when I was in school, I mean, I was really good at numbers. And I remember the teachers, would be like, oh, we'll just kind of put you to the side, or you could be like the referee to this game. And I thought, that doesn't what if I'm better at something or whatever else, shouldn't we be uplifting those people who are better or more skilled? And if a person is not as good, shouldn't we be uplifting them and maybe seeing what they need as well too? But we don't do that. We level the playing field and completely level things out, so every person is the same. So you can create this boxed person who then also then is disconnected emotionally or frequency or anything as well too, because everything even every word I speak is a frequency. I could say something tomorrow and it will happen because I'm resonating that frequency as I'm emitting this voice. And same thing with our food. That's why people used to sit at the table and they would bless the table. They would sit with their hands around, which is creating
That's what I've been saying recently. I've been saying exactly the same thing.
It's creating a vortex, right? You're creating a vortex because every person's holding hands, creating a chain, and they would bless the table. They would also use materials like linens. Linen was the most popular material on the table because it's a very high healing frequency. And when you wrap yourself in linen, it also heals you. But they would put these certain things and eat out of certain things because it would also raise the vibration of the food before they consumed it, so that they would then have the highest energy when they're doing that. And same with water. Dr. Emoto showed that, where he did the same exact thing, showed the love and hate, and the hate water looked like applesauce under a microscope. It was just completely destroyed, versus the love looked like a perfect snowflake.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's what nature is trying to give us, but we're busy inverting these things and then wondering at the same sense why we have all these health ailments and health issues and all these problems. It's because we're disconnected. We are so disconnected from one another, and then also disconnected from the auras and frequencies that are all around us. And then we're also taught that like even plants and animals are like secondary. I kind of see that all the time, where they're like these secondary things, and it's like, oh, it's just a tree. Well, that tree's doing a lot right now, but we just aren't showed that, because we have to treat things, we've been taught to treat things like property too much, and not caring about everything. And once we start caring about everything, we can see things differently, and then also take care of our whole area that we live in and uplift that. Because even when I got into even doing all the stuff with electroculture and understanding the earth's energy, I have bees, I have birds, I have grasshoppers, I have praying mantis, I have every insect, every beetle, every bird, every hawk, every pigeon, every dove. I have everything sit on my balcony, because they also pick up on the frequency. So if we spread, like you said, any type of message or energy that is toxic, I'm going to get toxic things back. It's kind of like, it's like, oh, I hope it doesn't rain. And then all of a sudden there's a rainstorm, and you're like,
It's a
oh,
karmic thing, isn't it, as well?
all these things are happening, and then you got a flat tire, and then all this, it all happens, and it's like, oh no, this is a horrible day. And then now, because you said it's horrible, it's going to be even worse, because it's all casting spells and putting out frequency.
Spells. We're spelling, aren't we?
Yes. Yes.
We're spelling. We're the TV. You and I have just said neither of us own tellies. We don't have any TV, so therefore we're not being programmed. And like when they broadcast, they're casting spells.
Yes.
They're broadcasting spells. Just before we carry on, I just wanted you to meet Rambo, Matt. Here's Rambo.
Oh, nice to see you. Nice to see him. Nice little cactus. It looks like he's doing really well. I like it.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I love my plants, and what you were talking about trees there, we are like a tree, aren't we?
We are. We have sap, like blood, which is blood, right? We also go with the moon, right? Every time the full moon comes out, we harness all that energy. And it starts to increase the magnetism of our body. That's why people become a lunatic, right? That's the whole lunatic, or they become a werewolf, whatever you want to say. And then also too, with the plants, we resonate very well with them, because if you look back in time, when people were trying to seek information, they would go to the plants, whether it be mushrooms, whether it would be just a plant, whether it be a meditation, whether it be a chanting, whether it would be a song and dance, right? We used to dance and do circles, and we used to do a lot of different things, because we are very connected to Mother Earth. But we've also been very disconnected, because we've been sold a lot of materials such as rubber and plastics and these things to disconnect us from the natural resonance of the earth. And with relating to plants, it's when you connect yourself to them, they can give you information. Marcel Vogel saw this with crystals. Marcel Vogel sat out with his plants until they basically gave him information. His wife was thinking, he's losing his mind, and he's like, no, the plant's going to give me the information. I know, I can tell, I'm connected to it. It's like we have the same thought. Then one day he got all the information he was trying to get from plants and whatever. But it was interesting, because they were showing with these studies that I learned with plants, that when a person connects to a plant, the plant can feel their pain from miles away, because you're so interconnected, so that the plant will start to curtail and the leaves will start to fall apart if the person's health is not that good. He also noticed that when they would snip a plant and go to cut one of the leaves, if the person looked at another plant that was while it was snipping the leaf, that plant would start to curl up its leaves and actually almost like prune up, because it could sense from the other plants. And even though plants don't have a central nervous system and all of these, organs that we have, they still are very conscious. And that's why, the best thing to do even with your plants is just giving them love and admiration, and they'll do well. If we don't do that, then it doesn't matter, what we try to do to them and pour chemicals that are all derived from synthetic things and whatever else. That's not going to fix them, because pouring drugs on top of plants is not going to give them what they need. And once we start to connect, it's just a different world. And that's where I started to connect more into, to understand that, all of these things have resonance. Everything has frequency. Everything that we touch, everything that we're in contact with, and it's all been inverted to disconnect us. And also, I mean, that's why even like 2020, everybody wearing gloves and all types of outfits, you're disconnecting from just natural touch. Touch is so important. Take a person and put them in a, for example, a solitary confinement for 24 hours, and look what happens. They lose their mind because they're no longer touching anything. And that's the same thing that goes with the plants as well too, and all of our food systems. If these foods are not being cared for, then these plants begin to die. So it goes with us. It's just like if you haven't seen somebody for a long time and you don't call them or text them, maybe when you do, you uplift their day and then they have a better week. And that's that frequency that we need to give to each other, instead of divide and conquer tactics that are always being used. Problem, solution, reaction, divide and conquer, attack each other. We need to uplift and bring positivity to each other, because
Hegelian dialectic.
Yes, and that's how we get rid of the nonsense that we face, and also make change. Nobody ever is going to make change if they're bullied and put into a corner. That's never going to happen. But if you uplift them and go, as I always say, trust your instinct. Whatever your instinct tells you, it's probably correct. But our instinct has been turned off due to technology and all of this other stuff that we've been bombarded with, so that we're not thinking. And the ingraining of things, right? Like holidays and schooling and all of this is ingraining these things into the mind, so that you're not thinking anymore and using your second stomach, which is, or second brain.
Your gut instinct.
Yes, you got it. Your gut will tell you, like, no, this seems wrong. This person, I have this, or this food, I don't know, it doesn't smell right. And they're making these chemical products on so many different ways that they're attacking certain senses. You have, for example, the fragrance, right? They have patents to disable the sense of smell and sense of taste. When you disable these two, you don't know what's good from bad anymore. And you also are now losing your primal instinct that is being turned off. Next, you have the AirPods and all these electric devices that are being placed into the ear. These are cooking these two sides of the brain that are very important to your thought process, and the frontal cortex. And that's disabling the sense, your sense of hearing. Then also now, if you got some weird, let's say we got gloves on or whatever, now you're disabling your sense of touch, and then last is obviously some sort of weird glasses that disconnect the sight. And without sight, I mean, it's very challenging to do things as well too. So, when you look at all these things, you start to see, these people know, at least in my opinion, the people who try to do these things to us and twist these things, they know humans either very well or not well at all. And they are just trying to bombard us at certain levels, at the cellular level, and picking apart certain things so that they can cause a problem in that area and then resell it back to you later. For example, if your vision goes, don't worry, we have some new implant that we can sell you and it'll cost you whatever, but you'll have to pay us for the rest of our life type of thing. So I've started to see there's solutions to everything. And even with just the eyes, right? Pearls work so well to heal the eyes. There's so many studies where they talked about pearl powder and pearls and cataracts and all of these things. A lot of them have all been suppressed and wiped off the internet because they compete with a multi-million-dollar industry. And when we start to follow the money and look at these things, a lot of these things don't come to light or haven't been put out there because they compete with lots and lots and lots of money. So my whole thing that I've always learned, and that's what I learned from these books too, the Invisible Rainbow and the Contagion Myth, both of those books as well too. When you see the money, you start to see, well, that's who invested into this. And, oh, okay, that kind of makes sense. Now that makes sense why that came out, and how all of that relates to frequency, because they're putting people in a fear state to try to roll out as whatever nonsense that they want to roll out to and make people comply and make them compliant. Versus if we were uplifting and making everybody strong, they would have so much resistance, they wouldn't know what to do. And that's how I started to see it. That's why I try to put out as many solutions as possible to help heal. Because once we start healing, we're an unstoppable community once you're healthy. You can't be, what are you going to do? If I can figure out every single thing and then some, what are you going to do to me, my family, my kids, my animals, and everything else? Nothing. Because I have figured out your plans before you're trying to do it. And then that also provides solution for the future generations as well too. So So they don't got to go through the nonsense that all of us have to go through as well.
Without leading to a pun, but you've discovered your health freedom.
That's it. And that's what we
and
need.
That's why I called myself Health Freedom UK. I remember hearing that like back in 2007, and you talked about David Icke. He was one of the guys that woke me up as well. I remember reading something like Humans Get Off Your Knees, and and another book of his as well that I've got. And I mean, there's just so many things that wake you up eventually to this nonsense world that we're in. And like you said about the masks and everything, and what they're trying to do there is just get people used to, in my opinion, going into this metaverse that they're trying to create.
Yes.
You know, when you talked about the glasses, the smart glasses, and the pods and everything, and eventually it's like, well, why don't you just take one step back from reality and just put that little headset on and live in this fantasy world, Well, now listen, before you go on there, right? Have a break, have a drink out of your. You can tell us, and you can tell me why you're drinking out of a copper cup in a second, right? I'm just going to say hello to the chat and some people in the chat. Yeah. So I'm just going to go from the top here. I'm just going to say hello to Miss Blue Sky there, and Chris Partridge, and TGK, and Kitty 21, and we've got anyone else? We've got the Wigan Joker as well. The Wigan Joker was the guy who first interviewed me as well, Matt. So it's his fault that I'm interviewing you now, actually. So thanks for that. We've got Mama, who's my sister. So thank you. She lives in Spain. We've got Tony as well. He's here. He's one of my moderators as well. But I know he's moderating another channel as well at the same time. So yeah, we've got, and I will take a look at these questions. If anyone's got any questions for Matt, we are going to do like some questions specifically for Matt. And what I'll do is I'll just look in the chat and I'll highlight any questions for you, Matt, that might be relevant, and then we can go through those. So let me just, because like we talked about some questions, so you've described, you've done a brief explanation of who you are. And so the other thing was, how, where, and when did you start to wake up and to the false narrative of health, Matt?
So I started seeing through a lot of stuff just back, I would say years ago, of just seeing through stuff that didn't make a lot of sense. And I watched a lot of documentaries and thought, this doesn't make any sense. And as I started watching some documentaries and kind of getting in there, it just kind of all started clicking, and then I started paying attention to a lot of stuff and really like digging deep into those things and then going, this doesn't make a lot of sense. And I would say 2020 accelerated it the fastest, right? Because while everything was happening and whatever, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. I just got on an airplane, everything's perfectly normal, and whatever else. Like, just these things were not adding up, and I think that accelerated everything. And then I bought, I don't know how many books, I've probably read a bunch, but I bought so many, and I just kept getting into different things. I got a lot into Wilhelm Reich. I got a lot into the electroculture. I got into frequencies. I got into magnetism. I just started seeing things and then connecting the dots going, oh, wow, okay, this kind of makes sense of why the food thing too as well. And just it all started putting it together, and even in the same thing, David Icke put out a lot of information too as well. And I thank him for all that. And it's just a lot of people who started connecting more dots, and it just worked with me too. And then I started seeing things and going, if somebody's doing this, maybe we can figure out some solution for this. And I started understanding going, here's a problem, maybe we can fix it with this, and just keep it simple, because a lot of this is very simple. It shouldn't be complicated at all.
You talked about connecting dots. David Icke talks about being a dot connector, doesn't he, as well?
I believe so.
Yeah. The dot connector. I think he did a live show that was called something like that. Thanks for that, Matt. Can you now explain how you discovered electroculture and explain what it is?
Of course. So basically, I started reading a lot of books on Victor Schauberger. Victor Schauberger was an Austrian man who lived in the forest and basically understood everything about nature, understood everything about water, understood everything about frequency. He created the first flying saucers. I mean, his technology was everything related to a vortex. He understood how fish would levitate, right? So when a fish is going upstream, it's actually levitating because it's basically understanding the currents of the water and where the water is actually the lowest part of, if we're going to go into gravity. it's the lowest part so that it can actually jump. And that's how salmons also get upstream. They levitate up the stream. They don't jump up the stream. They basically create water bubbles and water pockets out of their fins and through their tail that are basically vortexes to create propulsion or energy, right? So that's what it was. So I started studying Victor Schauberger and all of his work, and I was like, wow. So it was interesting because Victor Schauberger created a device called a bioplow, which was a copper plow that basically would go through the soil and work like a mole and basically create a spiral in vortex while it would go through. So it would cut through real easy. Because he's like, what you're doing with all these plows don't make a lot of sense because you're going against nature and you're like dragging something, which is going to make you work harder. So why would you do that? So he created this one that spiraled and he made it out of copper. And what he noticed was when he was doing these things out of copper, he was getting tremendous yields. He was growing, potatoes, let's say, 2 pounds. He was growing apples and oranges and all these things like pretty much like the size of a grapefruit and a watermelon, cabbage through the roof, corn through the roof. Every single thing was blossoming. And he's like, well, copper's obviously doing something because it's basically not impairing the magnetism of the soil. So what he discovered was that when he was looking at people, I believe in Turkey, there were people in northern Turkey using iron tools at the time, and their soil was falling apart. It was like completely destroyed. It was getting dried out. They have to keep doing all this process. They're working so hard. They're not producing any food. It was basically horrible in the 1940s, 50s. So he went to southern Turkey and he noticed that nobody was using any iron and they were using a lot of wood. And what he started to discover was that certain materials are impacting the magnetism of the soil, making them have to work harder. So he proposed an idea, I believe it was to the Bulgarian government at that time, of copper tools. And he said, listen, I'm going to create all the copper tools. If you, help us with the funding, we can give it to all the farmers. They'll be growing so much food, they won't know what to do with it. So he started creating all these copper tools and he basically got it all together. He went to go present it to the government at that time. And they said, I'm sorry, we can't do that. And he said, what? What do you mean? He goes, we don't need pesticides. We don't need fertilizers. We don't need any of this anymore. We'll just use copper tools and people will have so much food. The guy said, well, I have a kickback with the fertilizer companies and the pesticides companies, so we cannot allow that to go through. This was 1940s, 1950s. So what happened was that government official basically went out on the radio and the newspaper and told all the farmers, if you use these copper tools, you're going to yield too much food, which is going to not make you enough money anymore because you're going to have way too much food. So you're going to lose all your profits. So all the farmers at that time believed in that story, and they actually went against Victor Schauberger's work at that time. And I thought, oh my gosh, like what if that's crazy. So his work pretty much went to nothing. And he also created different types of free energy devices using vortex. He learned how to clean water. He learned how to structure water and bring living water. So when I dabbled into his work, I read all of his books on living water and started understanding water, structuring water. I started understanding copper, wearing copper, drinking from copper, the benefits of copper, basically because this is one nutrient that we don't get anymore because our soil is so loaded with iron. And it's interesting because when you look at iron going into the soil, basically if you have a copper shovel over here and you have an iron shovel over here, this iron shovel, you'll have to work 2 times harder to put it into the earth, and it's going to cause drought-like conditions when you actually put it into the soil because it's going to impede the magnetism of the earth. The whole reason people used to grow 2,000-pound pumpkins was because they understood how to harness the energies that are all around us and increase the magnetism. Now, when you use copper, on the other hand, it does not impact the magnetism of the soil at all, and it's actually very beneficial. So he basically studied all of this, and I thought, oh my gosh, this has got to come out there. And so when I was learning also too from Justin Christo Flo and his electroculture books, he was actually a French guy who did it in America. They burned all of his books and all of his work back in the 1930s and 40s so that they could make the chemical farming basically boom, right? The only reason chemical farming was so popular was because when they suppressed all of this very simple technology and very simple ways to harness more food, they could now pump all the pesticides and chemicals that were post-World War II into the soil and have a place to get rid of them. That's the same thing with fluoride. They
I
didn't
was
want
just about to say, I was exactly about to say, that's what fluoride was, an industrial waste, wasn't it?
Yes, yes. So, you know, same thing with
Fluorosic
that.
acid.
Yeah, fluorosilicic acid. Now I think it's trisodium phosphate, which is
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
eat a horse and whatever, and it comes from Florida. And that's people can read the book Toxic Torts. It's great by Gary Pittman. But in general, so Justin Cristo Flo was creating these devices out of wood and brass and copper, and he was putting them into his soil, and his plants were going nuts. And all of this stuff was happening, and it was wild because, you know, they've used things like DDT, right? DDT was good for me. This baloney that they used in 1950s. DDT impacted the birds, the bees, the insects. All
Yeah.
of these animals that were around, like birds, for example, when they chirp, they actually allow it's basically an ultrasonic frequency to emit to a plant to allow it to absorb more nutrients and to open up. That's why you hear
That's incredible. That's
the rooster
absolutely
come out.
incredible.
I was going to say the rooster come out at 4 a.m., right? The rooster comes
Yeah.
out, goes cuckoo, and then all of a sudden all the plants open up and they start absorbing all that dew that's gathering upon the sun rising. So, you know, that's how it first starts. But all of this stuff relates to frequency. And that was the whole reason that you saw like those 2,000-pound pumpkins back in the day. The people understood the frequency and what to do with their soil so they could increase that. And Victor Schauberger and Justin Cristo Flo started to understand that if you take copper and you take zinc and you make these batteries, that's basically what you're doing. You're making a battery and you place it into the soil, your soil will then increase its energy and its life force, its chi, its prana, and all of those things. And if we take it a step further, look at the ancient buildings, right? Look at these ancient old world buildings. They have antennas built up on top of them. They have little copper domes built on top of them, and they usually had a copper wire that ran down into the soil. If you look at temples, if you look at churches, if you look at mosques, all of these things are derived from natural materials that are one magnetic and one that are not magnetic, and they resonate at a frequency, and they run run a wire down into their gardens, and that's why their gardens go crazy. Even if you want to look at it, if you go into the Queen, the gardens go crazy because they know electroculture. They understand all of these things. They understand the frequency of the earth, and their materials are made out of certain materials to harness that. So with the gardening and all of this electroculture, it was very fascinating because I started understanding, wow, this is how they got those 2,000-pound pumpkins. This is how they understood these things. And also, when you look at places with the highest levels of magnetism, so where their soil is through the roof with it, you have places like Alaska and you have places like Hawaii, right? They're at some of the highest spots. Look at how large everything is over there. When you go over to Alaska, every animal is bigger, every plant is bigger, everything is gigantic. When you go down to Hawaii, the insects are huge, the plants are huge, everything, because all that beautiful magnetism. And that's the thing, is these people with the chemical farming, DuPont, Monsanto, all those people making all these synthetic things, they understood how to destroy the magnetism by using chemical farming and pesticides and everything else so that people would be hooked on this, right? They need these drugs, that's what they are, they're drugs on their plants to make them grow more and more. And the person himself or herself, the farmer, would decimate the soil, so they'd have to spray additional chemicals and keep going through this perpetual cycle till the soil is so destroyed. And then what do you have to do? You have to move to the next part of your land. And then all of a sudden, your 40 acres, we'll say, is now lifeless. And what do you do with it? You got to sell it. And then they can now control that land and buy it up from the people. But in reality, we can actually heal all of that land. And when I was getting into electroculture, I started understanding that when I started doing it, you can bring plants back to life, right? If a plant is not doing too well, if you have a tree that's not doing too well and whatever else, you could take a piece of wood, wrap it with copper, stick it by that tree, and most likely that plant will start to come back to life, because what you're doing is you're building an antenna for the earth to give energy to that plant, and it'll start growing like crazy. I had a moringa plant on my balcony. The moringa plants, on average, when you get their seeds, in their little pods, they're about 6 inches, right? So they're about this size. My moringa seeds, just in the season, and we had to actually move the plant as well too because they started painting and whatever. But just in that, my moringa seeds yielded 22 inches, the size of my entire arm, the whole pod, right? So the question is how much food can we have? I had another lady who was up in Ireland. Now, she grows garlic every single year. She's been growing garlic for, I think, 20 years. She put a wood antenna wrapped with copper, and she made it about 6 feet high, pointed it up towards the sky, and her garlic is already sprouting within 15 days. She said, I've never seen this happen before in my entire life. It usually takes months for this to happen. She showed the control, which was the garlic without the copper and without anything whatsoever, and it just looks like a pile of dirt. So, when you connect also back to frequency and these ancient sacred places, such as pyramids, if we talk about like the Bosnian pyramids, if we talk about Egypt, even Russian pyramids, Stonehenge, right? Like all of these things, like when you're looking at all these sacred sites, these people who were very connected to the earth, they understood the frequency, they understood magnetism, they understood the piezoelectric effect, right? When two objects are pushing on top of each other, creating a T, that's creating a piezoelectric magnetic effect, and that's amplifying the energy. And then as the full moon comes out, you have even more energy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And that's why people, I was going to say, used to harvest their foods at the full moon. You have the harvest moon, which is funny because at the full moon, you have the perfect balance of tree sap. Basically what happens is you have a tree, the sap goes up the tree to the full moon, and then it goes down the tree as the full moon is going away. But at that perfect point is that harvest moon, which is the full moon. And that's when the most life force and the best flavors come out. So everything is frequency, everything is energy, but we've been disconnected from it because we could solve, right, the whole food shortage, food scarcity nonsense baloney that they always try to push. It could be solved overnight. And then we wouldn't need all these chemicals. You wouldn't need pesticides. You don't need fertilizers. And you actually don't even need manure either. That was the craziest thing. So those three industries, which are usually where everything is, like we said, it's a waste form just thrown into something, and they don't know what to do with it. So they're like, oh yeah, we'll just sell it as pesticides and fertilizer, and people eat it up. So when you look at that, that's what they did. They just took chemicals that they didn't know what to do with them, turned them into fertilizers and pesticides, and then this chemical farming takes place, and then they have to move into genetically engineering and saying, oh, the plants aren't strong enough. We should gene alter them so they can withstand even more poison. And then the question is, when you look at all of that and take all that back, well, what happens when I eat the poison, right? What happens when I eat the heavy metals? What happens when I eat 4 billion pounds of pesticides and whatever else? My health is destroyed, right? And then I am now dependent on the system that's making money off of me because I didn't even know that that's being sprayed all over the food. I didn't know that these things are being altered. And then if I'm eating even animal products as well too, what happens if they're eating it? Am I just eating their same imprint too of the food, of the toxic food? And it's this whole perpetual cycle to where you didn't know where your health problem started because we've been so disconnected from nature because you only see it maybe on a screen instead of being out in it. If me and you went out right now and we started planting some food, we would be in it. I would know if the plant is having problems. I would know maybe it needs some love and some care. You know everything. But if you just go to the store or the market and you don't know any of that, then you're completely disconnected to its ability for it also to heal you as well too.
Yeah, I did a no dig this year, Matt. So my partner, she got her place about a year ago. She's been there just over a year now, and she's got quite a massive garden. So she bought a polytunnel, and we also did some no dig stuff outside the polytunnel as well. And what we did was we put cardboard onto the grass because most of it was just grass. So we put cardboard onto the grass, and then we got a load of dirt and put the dirt over the top, and then that broke down, and then we started planting, and we've been quite successful with it, but it's quite an expensive process. And I'm with you about the soil as well, right? And this is I've got to show you my new toys, by the way, in a second. And that is that, like a ton of dirt, as you call it, or soil, compost, whatever, right? You're talking about £100, so what, $130, something like that, for a ton, and that hardly goes anywhere, Matt. Yep. It'll hardly go anywhere. So the fact that, and also what you talked about, the nutrients missing from the soil. We started industrial farming in this country in around 1935, and I always say this to people, right? That if you think how rich, that soil was in minerals, and now think they farm the land, they kept farming the land over the land, and as those years went by, the minerals got depleted, and we are now starving.
Yes.
of minerals.
Yep.
We are now starving of minerals. But and I think it's really fascinating. We try and put the minerals back in with good dirt, or you might leave one bit or plant something different on it that maybe doesn't need as much, mineralization for that particular vegetable or whatever. But I wanted to show you. This is all your fault, by the way. This is all your fault.
Oh, there you go. That's awesome. That's amazing.
Look at that.
I like that. That's beautiful.
Comes from Austria.
That's amazing.
That's one.
Yep.
That's the one. And here's the other one. Look at that.
Oh, that's a nice one. I like it. I like
It's
it.
got a nice little design down on the top there. See it up there? Like a little slug type, swirler type thing. I mean, they weren't cheap, but now what you said about, like, we were talking about dirt and everything, and I'm thinking, you know what? I think I'm going to turn over the land. I'm going to put some good energy and magnetism back into the land, because I've just now got my own allotment, and it's a 62 square meters.
Very nice.
And so it's just a nice size. It really is. And I think I told you, I've already chosen 2 6-foot sticks. I went to the woods and I found, I'm going with energy.
Yes.
So I'm walking around and I go, there's a stick. Oh, there's that one looks, and I pick it up and I think, yeah, this feels good.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. And that's it. So I've already found 2, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep doing that. And then I'm going to place them around. Yep. I will document this. I'm going to place them around, and no one else I know on the site, because there's lots of little allotments around me as well. No one else will be doing anything like this. So already on there, we've got the person that had it before had raspberry bushes. They had tomatoes. And I think at the moment they're growing some garlic or maybe onions. I think it's garlic. I'm going to guess garlic. So this is what I've basically taken over. So I'm going to document it. I'm going to try it, and I'm going to do the whole copper thing as well, because I asked you, didn't I, about it? I said, shall I get covered copper or sealed copper? Because I mean, eventually it will lose its tarnish, won't it? And
yes, yeah.
And do you have any tools like that yourself, Matt?
So I actually have a copper gardening can, and then we have everything on the balcony. They're in pots. If I have to dig anything, I can just do it with my hands or whatever. But that's what's funny that you said that, no dig, right? Why did no dig become so popular? Because now you're not putting the iron back into the soil. You're digging either maybe by hand or whichever else, or you're not digging. So you're not altering the magnetism of the soil. Yeah. So that's why that became so popular. But yeah, once we go, like you just said, back into using brass and copper into the soil, you're basically just creating a battery, right? If you wanted to make your own battery, you would take copper and zinc and put them together, and you're creating battery energy into the soil. And just think of the soil, it's became lifeless and dead because, like you said, let's say, what was it, 1935? Okay, so that's almost 100 years ago. Like, to think the soil has just been beaten up and beaten up and beaten up and beaten up.
Absolutely.
There's no respect given to it. I mean, when you look at farmers have boots on. They're not even touching the soil. They're not even putting their feet or imprint into the soil. There's no frequency connecting. And back in the day, farmers used to take seeds, put them in their mouth, and then basically put them into the earth so that it would imprint the frequency of their body.
I've heard about that.
So that the plant is connected to you, because everything around us is all connected. We've just been disconnected from all of this. And then in relation to that, it's with just the setup you just said of finding the sticks and then just wrapping them with copper and placing them around in a circle or whatever formation you feel. That's how they used to do it with the Celtic round towers in Ireland. When you go into Ireland, they used to have thousands of Celtic round towers. They were huge. It wasn't for Rapunzel to throw her hair down, because that doesn't make any sense. But it was to increase the magnetism of their soil so they could have so much food. There used to be a forest in Ireland, a complete huge forest that's all gone now. Like, they understood the magnetic ley lines and how things work. And if you place certain materials, they could go in there and put themselves into a meditative state so they could levitate, right, in the top of that Celtic round tower, or they can increase the energy around them so that all their plants would prosper. And it's just crazy, because the more you start to understand I would say like shamanism, druidism, everybody being connected to the earth and these cultures, the more you see why all of that was outcasted. They told people they were witches, and we got to burn them and all this other stuff because they were connected to nature. They could find things for free. There was no profit, right? Even people who would douse, if they had dowsing rods, they would take the metal
Yeah.
and go find water. They would get themselves free water. They didn't depend on the king or queen to tell them when they had the water. They had their own water. So they were like, oh, we got to get rid of them. We got to get rid of those ones. We got to definitely get rid of those because they're competing against the resources that could potentially be free for everybody in abundance that could be for every person.
It's the same old story throughout history, isn't it? I mean, I was just about to talk to you about, look what the comparison with cotton and hemp.
Yes.
Wasn't it? I mean, hemp was such a better product.
Yes.
It was. I mean, it grows without any need for any support. It's pretty pesticide resistant, from bugs and everything. And yet, the cotton industry, which was backed by the bankers, which is not as good and not as versatile, won in the end, didn't it?
Yes. And also, too, hemp was banned because plastic couldn't exist. DuPont could not make its money off of
from the oil.
These plastic polymers. And it's funny because we have all these, we're saving the ocean and everything else. We could save everything instantaneously if hemp was just legalized across the world like it used to be before it was banned. But we wouldn't then have all this plastic and petroleum and all this nonsense. And I used to see that world all the time, everything with eco-friendly. And it's like we could solve all that overnight. If we really wanted to be friendly to the planet, we could utilize hemp and do that. We could also use linen, right? We could do a lot of stuff with linen as well, too. We could do a lot of stuff with wool. There's so much in abundance of all these things. And it's like these are all natural fibers. And it's interesting because when you get into frequency, you understand that the royals used to wear linen for a reason. They used to wear linen because it healed them. They used to use hemp because everything they could build out of hemp, you could build an airplane out of hemp. You could build anything you want out of hemp. So it's
hemp
like
is a food. I have it on my cereal sometimes.
Yeah, and you could eat it. And
hemp
there's
seeds. It's got 10. It's got the 10 amino acids that your body needs, hasn't it?
Yeah. So it's very assimilating to the body. And then that went with the whole, everything with cannabis as well, too. They had to take over that industry. It's all these things of getting rid of our old original ways and saying they're, this is bad and this is whatever. And then in the meantime, they invert all these things and then try to sell it back to the people. Because now all of a sudden they'll say, oh, we have hemp, but it'll cost you $80 million to use it, or you want to build your house out of it. Oh, it'll be $80 million, instead of it actually probably cost me $10, so it's always this inversion. But yeah, hemp was just basically an outlier because the fact of it competed against so many industries. You wouldn't have all the other industries. You would just use hemp, and that goes with the same thing with electroculture. You wouldn't have pesticides. You wouldn't have fertilizers. You wouldn't have, let's say toxic manure and all that. It's all gone. It's all gone, and it instantly changes that. And that's what these people, in my opinion, fear, is that the world is waking, and I see it every single day. I see the truth coming out more and more. I see everybody doing their research. I see everybody doing experiments to see if things work. Like electroculture has boomed because everybody is actually doing it. They're implementing it and then videotaping it, and their gardens are going nuts. And then I repost them and show it and talk about it because that's what we need to do. We need to create awareness on these topics so we can make change. And even you setting up a system where you felt that those sticks resonate with you, they're going to have more energy than if you just picked up a random stick and just brought it home with you. And that's the same thing with rocks. If we're going to go into rocks as well too, certain rocks and certain materials are put into a certain state that resonate at a certain frequency that when you go to hold it, you can actually feel it in your bones, in your brain, everything else. But we've been disconnected from that because people will just say, this is just a rock. That's all it is. But in reality, it's funny. Those same rocks, which are usually made out of quartz, are the same thing that's in this device, right? They're the same thing that are used for cell phones. They're the same thing that are used for computers.
Correct.
They're the same thing that are used for radios. They're the same thing that are used for every transmitting device on the planet. So if they're just rocks, then shouldn't we just be using something else? But that's how well that free piezoelectric effect works.
Yeah, and we're electrical.
Yes.
We are electrical, and people forget that, don't they? They just completely forget that we are electrical. Let me give you another question, Matt. Okay, so You talked about your supplements that you sell on your website as well, and you talked about scented products. You've covered a lot of this. Talk to me about LEDs, Matt.
Okay,
Why should we avoid LEDs?
So LEDs are light-emitting diodes, which are toxic to the eyes. There's a lot of studies linked to cataracts and LEDs, and you can look into that. The blue light is very dangerous to our eyes. Okay, so basically what happens is we used to have incandescent bulbs, and we used to have Edison bulbs and all these natural filaments, which provide a different spectrum that's more red hue, which is more natural and healing to the body and more relaxing. Now, the LED push of saving the planet and all this other stuff is basically trying to bring in bulbs which are actually very toxic to our cellular health. For example, if you sit in a room with an LED bulb, your melatonin levels are completely suppressed. You cannot fall asleep. It's almost practically impossible because the blue light that's constantly being emitted all the time. If you look at stovetops now, what do they use? A blue light now in there too as well. So if you wake up in the middle of the night and you flip the switch on or whatever it may be, that instantaneous blue light is going to wake you up. Also not on top.
That's the same with your phone, isn't it?
Yes, the same emitting blue light as that as well too.
I don't go to bed with my phone now. I leave it downstairs.
Yep. So you can get yourself either blue light glasses, or you can install different apps to make your color more red. So it's a better red hue. But these LED lights, not only do they basically alter your frequency, they alter your brain, right? They change the brain wavelengths and start to impair that. And these new ones that they're trying to roll out actually have Wi-Fi in them. And those LED lights with Wi-Fi actually lead your body to depleting glycogen faster or glucose faster because the Wi-Fi frequency and the light combination is toxic to the body. So it's interesting because if we wanted to save the planet, this is another one as well, the first Edison bulb lasted 110 years. But these new LED bulbs only last like maybe 6 months or whatever it is. So why don't we just use that technology, because it would make more sense. Now we can go into the topic of the LEDs save energy and all this other stuff, but we have technology that's been suppressed that's free energy that we could be using as well too.
Absolutely.
So a lot of it doesn't make any sense other than surveillance. There's a lot of studies and a lot of documents people can look into that a lot of these LED lights have little microscopic cameras in them. When you go to the grocery store and there's a little tiny the price tag or whatever, there's a little dot on there and it's got an LED light with an LED camera. And those are installed. So when you're bringing these things into your home, you're almost bringing, if you want to say it, a surveillance-like light that's above that can get data or be connected to Wi-Fi. And it pulses like a strobe light. So that's why a lot of people start to have seizures and they start to have a lot of neurological issues, is because they are pulsing like 3 million times. I looked this up, I think it was about 6 months ago or 8 months ago. I looked up that an LED light, I believe, pulses like 3 million times per second. You wouldn't even know that it's pulsing. That's why people start to hear it, right? There's a lot of people who are basically, they'll pick up on these frequencies and they can hear the lights because they're so loud, because their frequency is so high that that's not natural for us. So incandescent bulbs are the way to go. If you can't find incandescent bulbs, you can look into halogen bulbs. And then if you want to take it a step further, you can look into argon and xenon gas bulbs. Those are the original bulbs. That's what Tesla used to do with plasma and all the different types of plasma bulbs. Those are actually very healing because Tesla realized we can use light to heal ourselves as well too, rather than to basically build up toxins and destroy our health.
I've got a violet
That's the
ray
one.
machine. Yeah,
Yep.
I've got one here. I'll show you. I'll show you.
That's it.
Just a second. Have a drink, Matt. Yeah, I got this from Canada, Matt, and I'm gonna have it serviced before I use it because I want it properly working. You know, I think maybe the coil's been burnt a bit, so I don't know if I'm doing it right here. But yeah, I mean, like, here's the classic. Look.
That's it. You got it. So that's ultraviolet light, which is very healing for the body.
And it creates orgone, doesn't it?
Yes. Orgone, which is energy,
energy
floating around us. Yep.
Yeah. And I wish I'd discovered this one a few years ago.
That's it. Yeah, you can do it for the hair as well too.
It's a bit too late for me.
A little bit. That's another healing device that's been out for a long time.
It's technasmia, isn't it?
Yeah, it's been over 100, and I think it was created 100 years ago. But it's
antiquitech.
They called it the quack machine, which is funny because that word quack was coined by the Rockefellers to basically deem anything that was alternative to the real world, the real thing.
Yeah.
They used that word to basically make people look like they were crazy. So the person who created that device as well, they called that a quack medicine or quack healing, because it wasn't going with radiation, surgery, and basically, whatever else experiments they decided to do. And it was interesting because when I was looking at that, it's basically just resonating at a very high frequency plasma to heal the body. Same thing with a plasma ball, same exact thing. And it's interesting too, there's a lot of studies that correlate to plants and plasma and how they can boost plant growth as well. So not only can that help heal you, but can also help heal your plants at the same time. And what's the sun? Tons of plasma. So it goes all in this big circle.
And they tell us to keep away from that sun, don't they? You don't want to.
Oh, it's dangerous. Dangerous out there.
Dangerous little. I mean, isn't it funny, Matt? I always say this, isn't it funny, right? Since they invented sunscreen, the amounts of skin cancer has not decreased.
Yes. Yep.
And it's all it does is it just blocks the biggest organ in your body from breathing.
Yes. Yes. And it's only increased since that time also as well, because of all the electromagnetic frequencies as well too. So you're lathering yourself up with a petro-blocking chemical that's not allowing the largest organ to detox. And then it also has fragrance in it. So you're baking it into your skin, which is even crazier. We're taking this thing, baking it into our skin, and then blocking all the ability to heal with the sun. And then also funding, same thing, back to the petrochemical companies and all of them, funding them. And then not looking at something like, for example, the electromagnetic frequencies, which have been linked to causing skin issues, skin tags, melanomas, all these different things. So they always point one, they take one thing that's beautiful and they try to diminish it while trying to sell you some other toxic nonsense over here on the other side, like a bait and switch.
I've just seen a question, Matt, very quickly. Because we're talking about it.
My LED lamps are warm white. Are they as bad? So any LEDs just in general, even if it is warming, there's studies that have shown that with LED lights that are more warming or more red, what happens is they just leak more arsenic. So that's a big thing with all of these lights is there's a little thing on the things that come with all these LED lights that basically if an LED light breaks, in order to sue the company for if there is breakage or damage to yourself, you have to call in a person with a hazmat mercury suit. You have to turn off your air conditioning, and you have to basically complete this 30-step process before even allowing to sue for damages based on the damage of that light. And that's how many toxic things. So somebody was saying, if that's how much toxic stuff is coming out of these lights, what happens when we just throw them in the landfill, right? You throw them in the garbage and whatever else. Is there just all this stuff getting emitted the whole entire time? And they were showing that the warmer ones, even though they are warmer, they still are emitting a lot of arsenic. So that's the problem with a lot of these LED lights in general, is that they just emit a lot of toxins. And even the warmer ones are still doing the same thing. That's why it's best, like I said, if you can find incandescents online or halogen bulbs, those would be the better alternatives for that.
And they've been fitting, and they have been, and it's terrible. I bet you're getting it in the States as well. All the cars have got LEDs now, and at night, at night, it is absolutely ridiculous, isn't it? It's so blinding.
Yep,
it
and
really is.
It messes you up. And then also too, what I'm starting to see is these new homes. They're starting to put a new type of fitting, so you can't put the old incandescent bulb in there. They put these new ones that got this weird circuit or whatever. And these lights are so bright, I honestly think you could see them from 10 miles away. But it's insane, and you can't fit a different light in there. So, with that option, if somebody's doing that and they got a house like that, just buy lamps. Go buy a lamp from a vintage place or an antique spot, and you can buy yourself a lamp and put that in. And that's what we've done. You put a lamp.
I bought some old bulbs, incandescent bulbs today.
Nice.
I ordered some. I mean, at the moment, like this light that's lighting me here is my sad lamp, Matt.
Yeah.
And it's a proper old-fashioned sad lamp, not with LEDs.
Wow. Amazing.
So I've had it quite a few years.
Yeah.
So it's a much better form, because now if you look for a sad lamp now, it's all LED.
Yes.
It's all LED.
Yeah.
So and also we were talking about putting stuff on your skin in the summer. All I did, I put my salve on in the summer. I never got burnt once, and we had a hot summer here in the UK. It was a long, hot summer. It really was. And if I knew I was going to be out, like a couple of times we went to the coast, and it's quite difficult to avoid too much sun when you're at the coast, and you want to be by the sea and stuff. I just used to slap this on. Everyone's putting on their sunscreen, and I was just putting on my salve, and I would just go a nice tan. I would just tan. I mean, I wasn't stupid. I wouldn't just sit out in it. I'd have a cover, I'd have some sort of cover. But occasionally, when you went into the sea for 20 minutes, right? I mean, when I was a kid, I got sunstroke. I remember getting sunstroke. I mean, I didn't understand it because there I was sitting in my little rubber dinghy, having a great time at the age of 12.
Yeah.
And the water's coming in, the salt water, and it's hitting my legs. It's hitting my legs, and it's the hottest time of the year. It's 1976, one of the hottest summers we ever had in the UK here. And I got out, and by the evening, my legs were purple.
Wow. Yeah.
And I got full blown, sickness. I was terrible. I was proper sick. I was in a right state. I learned about the sun so much then. I really did.
Well, and we have to have balance of things, and I think that needs to be taught. And like you said,
yeah, absolutely.
That's the biggest part that's never taught, or you need to build up like a starter tan, or go out in the sun in the March or May or April and build yourself up a starter tan. But it's funny you said that about 1976, because that's the year of the car that was running on water, right? There was a car that was
that's right, the water car.
The water car. So, it's like there's so much technology and things related to water and all of this, and it's just been not talked about. But that was when the car that was created on water, because that was when we were having the same crisis that we're having in 2021 of energy and 2022 energy crises that they were having, and there were those things out there at that time.
Yep. I'm going to look for some questions to see if there's any questions that are in the chat here. Here you go. Here's one. Okay. So, Matt, could I ask you, what are your opinions on 5G, and if you're against it, and then your tips to reduce the effects on our bodies? In the UK, 5G towers are growing, and moving not always an option. And moving is not always an option.
Yeah, we could hit on that one. That one's really big. I think every person should read The Invisible Rainbow. That's probably the first thing to understand what we're dealing with and the frequencies that we're dealing with. As for protecting yourself, there's a lot of different things that you can do. First and foremost, you need to clean up your body and detox heavy metals and pull heavy metals out of the body, because if you have a lot of heavy metals in the body, it will work like an antenna. The next
What
thing,
do you think of zeolite, Matt?
I've heard mixed things with it. That's why I prefer shilajit over zeolite. And it's just because, I've heard a lot of interesting stories. I've heard great things. I've heard bad things. It's been just a mix. And I know that there's a company who rolled out the poison of 2020. They also have their hands in zeolite. So one of those companies, which I'm not going to mention on here, but one of those companies have their hands in that. So that kind of is a big thing for me, because if they controlled the source, then they could change it too as well. So that's kind of for me. But with relation to that, pulling the heavy metals out is important. That would be one of the first ones. Next, I would say would be getting rid of anything that's plastic out of the home, and going back to the linens, wools, and cotton, the natural fibers of putting on the body, because those can also pick up frequencies. If you're wearing plastic, you're creating a negative charge on your body, which will gather more static charge if you're surrounded by cell phone towers and things like that. The other thing too you can do is getting rid of Wi-Fi out of your home. And
I've done that. Going
back to the hardwiring, like I have now, there's just a cord that's connected to the computer, and I just use that when I need the internet, and I've disabled Wi-Fi. I don't need it. The other thing you can do is you can use your phone without data if you wanted. You could plug it in with an adapter cord as well too, and you can still use it for every single thing that you did. You just don't need data to use it, because there's nothing data when you're calling or texting. There's actually no data involved. So that's another thing. You can switch your phone from, if it has the 5G setting, to the 4G setting. That's another option as well too. The other things you can look into are like shielding for either for your windows or for your home. There's a lot of different types of basically metal shielding that can be placed onto either like the window or the walls. And what you would do is you'd go get yourself an EMF tester and check where areas are the highest levels. Because, like, for example, I found out when I was going around with the meter that some of these signs and some of these things that they're rolling out, you wouldn't even know that it's a tower until you had the meter. Like, there's a sign for a storefront down the street, and it's got like 20 different stores in it. The sign itself is a cell phone tower, so we're constantly being bombarded with that. The other option you can do too is a lot of barefoot grounding, going out into nature, putting your feet into the earth and laying on the
Yeah.
earth, completely touching the earth, like your whole
Getting
body.
those negative ions in you.
You got it. Or go by the also too. You could go by the ocean and do it in the beach too as well.
Yeah, yeah. I always say that, because if you just walk along the beach, you get a lot of negative ions, or streams, like fountains and
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah, anything that's moving water of the original way is really important for that. But you can do a lot of that. And then, like I said, putting yourself on the earth, going out in nature without any devices and putting yourself on the earth, touching the earth. You can hug a tree, whatever you want to do. That will take all that static that's sitting on your body, because all of these things are just pinging frequencies all the time, and they're constantly pinging. And that static is building up on the body, and you need to just release that. And also, too, whatever you do with your home, it's like your temple. So if you remove the Wi-Fi and you get rid of these synthetic fibers and these things, then that can mitigate a lot of it, right? Because if you're inviting these things in consciously, like with Wi-Fi, you're emitting that frequency. Those towers can connect to your Wi-Fi and your devices and bring that into your home. So when you get rid of that, you can at least get rid of that as well too. So there's quite a few different things, but the biggest ones I would say is definitely cleaning up your diet. You can look for structured water, which is living water as well too, from rivers and creeks and streams. Drinking that can help hydrate you. And then also too, like I was saying, the cleaning up of the clothes and the linens and the materials, and then going out in nature. That's the biggest one. Just go out in nature and be in nature and spend time out there, because once you're disconnected from all of this, your body will start to heal because you're naturally in nature.
I've got another question here for you, Matt. What do you think are the 3 top crystals everyone should have in their home, and why?
Oh, that's a good one. So I would go with quartz, but the actual quartz that's like clear, because that has the highest amount of oxygen, and it's structured. It's clear quartz. That would be one, and you can actually structure your water with it as well too. So that one is probably one of the best. And then the other 2 I would say that you could bring into your home would either be black tourmaline, which is really great at frequency protection or EMF protection. And it also
There's a lot of that fake around, isn't there, Matt?
There is. So you have to see who the source is and where it's coming from.
Yeah. There's a lot of. I've heard about black tourmaline. Yeah.
Say on eBay and stuff, you can look at it and whatever. But just make sure you know where it's coming from. There are people who legitimately do this, or they find them. I find a lot of people who just go searching for rocks and they list them up and they sell things too as well. And then the other ones you can bring into the home would be either like malachite, which is copper carbonate. It's a really interesting stone. It also
I've heard of that one as well. Yeah.
Or azurite. Azurite is the other one too. That's the ancient stone. You can look at the other 2 would be blue topaz or blue lapis. And those last 4 that I was mentioning, the reason I say that is because if you look at Edgar Casey's work and all of the things that he was doing, he related big time on those 4 stones and was very, 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 very connected into those stones, and actually went to the mines to go find those stones. So those 4 are very channeling to our mind. And then quartz just overall is just very channeling to our body because of the silicon and the oxygen inside of it.
Yep. Great. Thanks for that. You know a lot about crystals, man.
I study a little bit. I read a little bit, and then I connect it, and then I don't know. I kind of just put it together and try to think
You
about
ever gonna put some crystals on your site, your website?
So we're going to do some stuff with electroculture antennas and some different things related into frequency that we'll be releasing.
When you say we, you've got a partner, haven't you?
Yeah, me and my wife, Amra.
Your wife, Amra.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll be putting some stuff up with that. We're also going to be doing some stuff with some books and all different things with different books that we're working on, and just bringing more information, so that this can be also presented in multiple different ways. And so that if a person wants to read about it or learn about it, that they can implement these things. But the goal with the crystal thing in the future, maybe some stuff with that, it should, I just have to figure out like that's the sourcing and everything to make sure that it's, like you said, correct and not, phony. Because there's a lot of phony stuff out there too that I realize that's in this world. So, you want to make sure that it resonates with you and then everybody else as well too.
I've got another question here for you. I know plants work on frequency, and I've seen a machine that can detect this, and they made such amazing sounds. I've seen that. Have you seen that, Matt?
Oh, where they plug the little like speaker system into the machines, and
Yeah.
then it starts.
Yeah.
Yes, I've seen that. Yes, that's very similar. There's technology out there that it's very similar to. But yeah, there's frequencies everywhere. It's just we have 5 limited senses. Like we see with just the visible light spectrum, and that's it. And we're not paying attention to all these other frequencies because a lot of the technology that shows these frequencies has also been suppressed, right? Like because if you could see, for example, all the electromagnetic frequency around you right now, that would change everything, right? People will be like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that this existed." But if you don't know it's there, then that's when they can take advantage, or when you just don't know that it's impacting you or your plants too. There's a lot of stuff with infrared and UVs that relate to plants, and it's interesting because they emit certain frequencies which also attract certain insects, because those insects can pick up on UVs and infrared rays and know which plant to go to or which plant to clean up. When bugs come around and they're trying to basically infiltrate, that's what they always say, they're infesting or whatever. They're basically trying to clean up nature. That part of nature needs to be rebuilt and needs to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
So they come, or they might come to pollinate because they pick up on the UVs and the infrareds. So it's all these different spectrums that we're just not seeing because we can only see with these beautiful eyes a certain spectrum, and there's so much more out there.
I've got another question here for you, Matt. What supplements could help people who took the treble top, as I call it?
So with the situation, it's a challenging one. So because the problem is it's a hard one. This is a hard one, and just in general, just because we don't know what's in any of this stuff. So
Well, we've got some idea.
we have some idea, and it could relate it to heavy metals and things like that. And anything pulling out heavy metals can also be just a benefit in general. So you're looking at different clays, you're looking at shilajit, you're looking at cilantro, you're looking at tamarind paste. You're looking at things like that. But the problem sometimes that lies is that we just don't know what's in all of these things. So it's hard to give an answer of what works best. But chelators for heavy metals are usually one of the best things for people, no matter what, just because everything that we get impacted with is usually heavy metals. Even if it's in the air, the water, the food, it's heavy metals as well. So anything that chelates heavy metals would probably be your best go-to with that situation.
Yeah. Good answer. Thanks, man. Have a drink, Matt. I'm just going to find you another question. And so do you have a garden, Matt? Or is it just your balcony because you live in a flat and stuff?
So we have a balcony and we have a bunch of plants on there. I have about a 12-foot moringa tree. I have bell peppers. I have mint. I have some no, not tomatoes. I have basil, 2 different types of basil. And yeah, it's been going crazy. I have some cayenne peppers. I think I have 75 flowers on there right now. So it just goes nuts. And it just, the more you connect and more being in tune, the more it just kind of all makes sense that, that's what we need to do.
What do you think of Cambo?
Oh, I think that's the ancient stuff. I think if I'm correct, isn't that the ancient
as a detox?
I don't know. Combo, isn't that the frog? Isn't that with the frog?
I don't know. I'll be honest with you, Matt. I don't know Cambo.
I thought that's with the frog, but I don't know. That one I don't know. I actually don't know. Okay. If I knew what it was, then I would. Yeah, but I was gonna say because there's this thing with the frog, but that's related to like ayahuasca, so I don't know if that's on the same topic.
Let me have a quick look on the internet. It's a secretion of a tropical frog. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. So
you're absolutely right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the detoxing using a frog's insides or whatever it is.
Yeah, indigenous people have used Cambo for centuries to heal and cleanse the body by strengthening its natural defenses and warding off bad luck.
I can see that. That's up there with ayahuasca and mushrooms, and that's a different type of cleansing, right? That's inner work, right? Clearing out all the frequencies and maybe working on one's inner self, and that can work really well with those things. And same thing with the mushrooms, and same thing with ayahuasca. Those things are used in those practices to help, work on the soul level, and they can be very beneficial. It's just if a person has a lot of trauma, they just have to be very careful because, they're going to see things that they, maybe haven't seen in a long time or even if ever.
Yeah. Okay, and I've got let's go to another question for you. Oh yeah, talk to us about magnetized water, Matt. Now okay, so my tap water here, all right, is fluoridated. So I distill it because I haven't got an RO system. So I distill my water and I put it in a jug, okay, and I'm going to just show you over there. I don't know if you can see it in the distance
Yeah.
there. So next to that thing that I don't believe is the correct shape, by the way.
Yes.
I just wanted to say that for the record.
Yeah.
Okay. But I have that there to make some points to people to make a good point about it. So there, and what I've done is, Matt, I don't know if you can see, but I've actually wrapped some natural fibers with neodymium magnets. I've got about 60 of them wrapped around it to try and magnetize the water, to put the magnetism back into the water. Do you think what do you think of that idea?
So that can work really well. And then what you're doing is you're structuring water. So you're bringing back the molecular structure of water, because what's happened is our structure of water has been destroyed. It's been turned to like applesauce, and the hydrogen molecules and all the beauty of water has been pretty much decimated. And then it becomes dead water. And then when we go to consume it, it impacts our body. So with the magnetizing of the water, you're bringing back the magnetism or the life force of the water, which will start to heal the body at the cellular level, which is why so many people are suffering from hydration issues. They basically have no hydrogen in their body. So their body is starting to pull hydrogen out of it so it can balance itself out. But when using magnetized water, you start to heal the body at the cellular level. And then you'll start to notice your energy will be better. You'll have better mental clarity, better digestion, because all of this water sitting in these pipes that are all ran through straight lines and everything else is deadening the water and the frequency of the water.
That's why there's machines now that are devised that go around the pipes that have got magnets in, haven't they?
Yes, and you can put those on there, and that can wrap around the pipe with a north-south, and you can put those on each different pipe, and that can help. That can be very beneficial to the water as well, and that's a simple apparatus. You can do it yourself, and you're just bringing back the structure of the water while it's going through these pipes, because everything is running in straight lines, and water does not flow in a straight line. And that's the whole thing about Victor Schauberger. He understood that everything spirals. Everything is in a vortex. Everything is, when you look at things, they're always spinning. Look at a tornado, hurricane, whatever it may be, they're always spinning. But we're creating things that are going in a straight line, which don't make a lot of sense. It's similar to if you look at the hose, like the rubber hose that people use while watering their plants. Mm-hmm. It's in a straight line. The water's being shot out straight. Water doesn't come out that way. It comes out and goes all different directions. So we're altering the way in which water moves, which leads to the deadening and the reduction in life over time, because the fact that the water molecule is now basically falling apart and turning to, like I said, like applesauce. So it's losing its life force structure, and all the molecular bonds that are in there are all falling apart. So what you're doing with that is you're bringing those molecular bonds back, and then bringing back that snowflake effect where where it's perfectly structured, almost kind of like a beehive, like with the hexagons and everything else. You're bringing back that molecular structure to the water so it can be very healing to the body.
And to remineralize my water, I use Himalayan or Celtic salt as well. So what I tend to do, and I don't know if, because I know you're going to share this with your community as well. I mean, one of the best ways to get water into your body as well, make it as clean as possible. But if you take some salt and you put it under your tongue, and just before you drink water, let about 5 or 6 crystals melt under your tongue, right? This is then going to help the water get into your cells properly. And it's going to, because that's half the problem. We can drink lots of water, but it doesn't get into your body, and it's not getting into your cells. And the lack of water as well leads to a lack of memory, and and it can lead to things like dementia and all sorts of things. And, because I did a special on it on a video. I did a whole half an hour on water. And so, and just leading to that, Matt, what would you, have you got any very quick remedies? I'd say that's one of the easiest ways to get water into your body. Have a little bit of good salt under your tongue just before you drink some water.
So I was going to say, you can vortex your water with a wooden spoon or a silver spoon if you have silverware.
I've been doing that as well.
I was going to say, all you have to do is 7
and
times.
it creates like like a whirlwind type thing effect.
Yes. So you do 7. You can do 7 times to the right, 7 ways clockwise, 7 ways counterclockwise with your silver spoon, and that will actually increase the magnetism and energy of the water and start to help structure it. Also, because your intention of your mind going into that water will also do that as well too. You can just hold the water with your bare hands and put your hands around it, and you can connect to the water to help structure the water as well. And that's
Again,
the thing.
this is the whole energy thing, isn't it? It's about
Because
your intention.
Water is living, right? It's a living substance that's always moving, always has consciousness, always has memory. It's very alive, and we've just been disconnected from that and not understanding about how we need to bring this structured water back into our body, because our whole body is crystals, right? It's crystals and water. That's pretty much what it is. When you go to give somebody a hug, you're increasing your piezoelectric effect because you're squeezing them. So that's what gives them that good vibration. So same thing when you bring in the structured water, you're bringing in water to help protect your DNA, because as we age, our DNA is basically breaking down at the crystal structure. And when you bring in the structured water, like we were talking about with the vortexes and those things, now you're helping those crystals, and you can actually lead to anti-aging and reverse healing, or I'm sorry, healing properties as well. You can also do it if you structure that water and pour it on your plants. They will also grow like crazy too, because now they're getting real living water, not dead water from the sink and the tap and the fluorides and all those things.
Fantastic. Excellent. Okay. And let's see if I've got another question here for you. Okay, yeah, we'll make this the last one, Matt, because we've covered a lot and you must need a break, I'm sure. What are your goals for the next few years or months? What's ahead of you?
So the next few months and next few years is just trying to bring out as much information as I can and really try to, just help solve more issues. I mean, I guess that's what it is, and really see the whole electroculture copper revolution kind of come to fruition, because I see that happening for 2023. I see people's gardens going crazy. I see it on social media every single day, all the stuff that people send me. So I just really see just changes occurring, right? And people breaking away from the system, which has been broken for a long time, and really creating change and making us move forward. Because if we keep just doing the same stuff over again, we're going to get the same result. And I can't do that anymore. And I guess 2020 was a big step of like, no, can't just do it anymore. So I feel like that's kind of basically, I would say, one of my main goals is really trying to put out different things that can work as remedies and solutions, so we can make change and awareness, and really just like see how high that we can take that. Because if every person starts doing all of these things that we even talked about, that's a multiple of 10 factor on everybody else that they know as well too. And that's how we make change very fast. And that's how I see things changing altogether. And that's what I want. Like, I don't want people suffering from food shortages. I don't want food scarcity, energy scarcity, all this media nonsense that they put out. I don't want any of that. I just want abundance for everybody. And I think when we take back our health first and foremost, and then work on our terrain, we can all have that. And I think that's really important, because nobody should have to suffer from any of those things that they try to put all over the media and everything. People should have abundance, and we need to be taught to have abundance and uplift each other so that we can all have abundance together. And if they want to sit and do all their nonsense and whatever else, they can do that. But it's not going to affect me, and I'm not going to consciously affect me and allow that to come into my realm and my community. And that's what this is. And even just doing this right now today, talking about these things, is just trying to bring this information out to everybody and as a community, so that we can all see each other prosper and all of us have abundance.
Yeah, we're planting seeds, aren't we, Matt?
That's it. That's all.
It comes back to the gardening again. I just want to make this, I just saw this comment here just before we end. I was thinking intention. That's what a lot of people have lost, and not thinking more deeper about what we have now and how we look after it and ourselves better. And then she carries on to say, this is why interviews like this are important, as we all need reminders or seeds about life.
It's true. And you sometimes need that reminder on whatever topic it may be. And that's why I hope this brings information to somebody, and just plants a seed. Just try one thing and see how you feel and go from there. Because that's what it did with me. I just started changing one thing and going, oh, that doesn't make any sense. And then I went, oh, okay, if I change that, oh, wow, okay, that kind of makes sense. And then I started experimenting and I started building my own little antennas and doing all kinds of stuff and going, wow, I've been duped, like, and then admitting I was duped to it. But that's all.
I saw one of your videos, and you're working on a shower head, aren't you?
Yes. So I'm working on a shower head water filter that's going to structure the water as it comes through as well too. So
Wow.
that's another thing that I'll be adding to the list for 2023. So it's gonna be a crazy year, but I'm excited for all of it because it's going to just give people different solutions to all of this and also make life a little simpler because some of these apparatus I've seen are absolutely massive and it doesn't make any sense. So it's just about giving somebody, in my opinion, a simpler solution so that we can combat the nonsense.
Matt, just remind people, what's the name of your website again, please?
Yep. The website is cultivateelevate.com. And you can also find us on Instagram and YouTube, Rumble, and Telegram now. I do a lot on Telegram, and I put a lot of information up on there. And yeah, any of those will have all of our information.
You like to do videos where you go dark?
Oh, it's just it's because the sun's setting. That's all it is. It's because it's almost winter solstice or whatever. So the sun starts to set. So if I started at 5, it starts going down and it gets darker. But it adds a little mystery, to the video and whatever.
I think it's great.
But yeah, it's just funny because if I don't have any lights on like normally during the day,
yeah,
so in order to go turn it on, it's just like whatever. That's the time when it's over. That's kind of how I see what it is.
Yeah, great, Matt. It's been fantastic. Hopefully, maybe you can come on again in the future because there's probably so much more as well that we could have talked about today. It's been a great interview. And thank you again for coming on and being my very first guest. Actually, I've really enjoyed your company. You're amazing. You've got so much information in your head there. You really have, and it's great that you've been sharing it with the small community that I've got here. And yeah, maybe we'll do it again in the near future. So I'm going to end the show now, folks. Right, and I'll see everyone again. Probably I'll be doing another video on health freedom in about 2 weeks' time, because I tend to do a show, Matt, every sort of 2 weeks, every Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
Every other Wednesday. So if anyone wants to find me, please find me at Health Freedom, a YouTube channel. And I've got some links on my YouTube channel to Matt's website and also to his Telegram channel. I didn't find you Instagram. I don't do Instagram yet, but it's something I'm probably going to be looking into as well, Matt. But your links are underneath this video. So again, everyone who's joined us tonight, thank you so much. I really enjoyed Matt's company. It's been fascinating. I'm going to have to watch this back and write down some more notes that he's given us, some information he's given us. And Matt, look, this is one of the books that I'm looking at the moment. Look.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And it covers like pyramid. Again, it's an old one.
Yep.
Pyramid energy and shiatsu, all sorts of things like that. So again, I'm just trying to develop more and more knowledge that I can share with the community. And but again, thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. Thanks, Matt. You've been an absolute brilliant first guest. And anyone who's interested, I've managed to line up Amanda Vollmer. I think it's January the 11th. She's so hard to book.
Yeah.
She's a busy lady, but I think her products like DMSO is amazing. Dimethyl sulfur oxide, and I really want to talk to her about that. Because I think it's an amazing product. It really is. Thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate everyone watching tonight, and bye for now. All right. Cheers, then.
Until next time.